first, Prince Harry's lawsuit against publisher of the Daily Mail and Mail has begun at the Royal Courts of Justice in London.
When courtroom doors closed, whispers turned into headlines no one expected. Cameras waited, tensions thickened, and Prince Harry stepped into a moment that would rewrite his public story. What began as a legal formality spiraled into a disastrous exchange, where every word echoed louder than any royal title. Observers watched disbelief spread as the judge pressed harder, exposing cracks long hidden behind protocol and privilege. This video unpacks the stunning confrontation, the revelations it triggered. Inside that courtroom, what really happened when authority finally met accountability. Prince Harry unmasked. As Prince Harry stepped into the witness box, the atmosphere in the courtroom shifted. There was a weight to his presence, a sense that what was about to unfold was far more than just a legal proceeding. It was a rare, unfiltered glimpse into the life of a man who has long claimed his privacy has been under relentless assault. Harry did not hold back. At times, his emotions surged so intensely that the audience could feel the strain of years of intrusion pressing down on him. He appeared raw, vulnerable, and yet fierce, presenting a portrait of a man pushed to the limits of endurance. From the very first moments, Harry's testimony crackled with frustration and anger. He spoke sharply, almost searingly, about the media's repeated claims that he had no right to privacy. The words were not just legal jargon to him, they were personal, cutting to the heart of a life constantly dissected in public. Disgusting, he said, summing up years of alleged violations. But he did not stop at himself. Harry described, with unmistakable intensity, how the media had targeted his wife, painting her life as an absolute misery because of the unceasing glare of press attention. Every accusation, every intrusion, every headline was presented as more than gossip. It was an assault, a calculated effort to profit from private lives. Harry's testimony unfolded like a vivid drama, shifting between everyday life and shocking intrusions. Calls he believed were private were allegedly eavesdropped on, his travels meticulously tracked, and every movement scrutinized. Intimate moments with friends, lovers, and family were dissected and exposed for public consumption. In his retelling, the courtroom became more than a legal space. It turned into a stage where personal pain met public scrutiny. He was forced to confront in front of the world the lasting impact of invasions that violated the very privacy he once took for granted. Even as he gave his testimony, Harry's composure wavered. His hands shook, his voice cracked, and his eyes revealed the weight of years spent in frustration, grief, and quiet anger. Each word seemed to carry the burden of a life relentlessly examined, where private pain became a public spectacle. For a brief moment, the Duke of Sussex appeared not as a royal figure, but as a deeply human man, vulnerable, emotional, and raw. The courtroom witnessed more than legal arguments. It offered a rare window into the personal cost of living under unceasing scrutiny and relentless media pressure. By the end of his testimony, the image was clear. This was a man caught between his own private anguish and the relentless demands of the public eye, laying bare the emotional toll of a life where every action, every relationship, and every misstep could become tomorrow's headline. Harry couldn't control his emotions in court, openly expressing his frustration over how a particular media outlet negatively targeted his family. But how deeply did this affect him, and could he keep his composure under intense scrutiny? Let's find out. When emotion met authority. From the very instant Prince Harry stepped into the witness box, it was clear that this would not be an ordinary day in court. His posture, tense and rigid, reflected a man visibly unsettled, carrying the weight of personal anguish into a legal arena where composure is meant to be paramount. Instead of offering calm, measured responses, Harry often found himself sparring with the judge, questioning the line of questioning and reacting sharply to interventions that were meant to guide him through the courtroom procedure. His frustration seemed to boil over at times, leaving the room buzzing with a rare, uncomfortable energy rarely witnessed in such formal proceedings. Courtroom experts and seasoned legal observers couldn't help but notice just how unusual Prince Harry's behavior was. For a witness in a civil trial, where credibility, calm, and restraint are everything, his defensiveness stood out sharply. Rather than sticking to straightforward answers, Harry often ignored instructions to leave complex legal arguments to his lawyers. Instead, he repeatedly interjected, explained, and defended himself, blurring the line between courtroom procedure and personal grievance. While many could understand his emotional reactions, given the weight of the case and personal stakes, this approach carried real risks. Experts warned that by letting frustration show so openly, Harry might inadvertently weaken the case he had worked so hard to build, turning moments of passion into potential pitfalls. What made the day in court especially intense was the sharp contrast between Prince Harry's tense, defensive moments and the rare glimpses of calm that emerged after brief breaks. At first, his posture was rigid, his responses sharp, and his frustration palpable, as if the weight of his personal life being scrutinized had seeped into every word and gesture. But during short intermissions, a subtle shift occurred. His shoulders eased, his tone softened, and for a moment, the man behind the public image appeared, a prince caught between deep personal anger and the strict expectations of courtroom decorum. It was a fragile, almost painful balancing act, the effort to control raw emotion, maintain discipline under intense legal scrutiny, and navigate the very human urge to react when feeling wronged. For many watching, the scene offered a rare window into the inner conflicts of a man whose private life has been relentlessly scrutinized. Harry's performance in the witness box highlighted not only the emotional toll of legal battles, but also the tightrope walked by anyone in the public eye who must defend themselves under intense scrutiny. It was a moment that combined vulnerability, anger, and resilience, a turbulent display of emotion that would leave lasting impressions on everyone in the courtroom and beyond. It was difficult for Harry to compose himself in court, weighed down by the gravity of the case and the personal hurt he felt. But could this emotional display backfire on him? And does he have concrete evidence to support the intensity of his feelings? Now, let's delve into how Prince Harry's testimony is facing intense scrutiny. Credibility on trial. As the hours dragged on, the courtroom's focus began to shift. What initially seemed to be a straightforward examination of the press's alleged misconduct slowly transformed into a far more delicate and complex question. Could Prince Harry himself be trusted as a witness? Every gesture, every hesitation, and every carefully chosen word came under the microscope. Legal observers, journalists, and members of the public watching closely could sense the tension. The man, who had long claimed to be the victim of relentless media intrusion, was now the subject of intense scrutiny himself. During questioning, Harry was confronted with claims that could have undermined his credibility. He firmly denied ever using the pseudonym Mr. Mischief to reach out to journalists, insisting that such accusations were entirely false. He admitted he could not clearly recall certain conversations, citing memory lapses, and dismissed allegations suggesting that people in his social circle had leaked private information. Each denial was delivered with conviction, yet skeptics in the courtroom reacted cautiously, questioning whether his responses were based on fact or carefully constructed defense. Observers noted that some of his statements leaned heavily on feelings, assumptions, or perceptions of past events, rather than hard evidence that could be independently verified. The situation became even more complicated when critics accused Harry of using the case as a platform to air grievances far beyond the legal matters at hand. He appeared to link the press's actions to personal misfortunes, including failed relationships, periods of struggle with alcohol, and the pressures of public life. By doing so, he seemed to expand the narrative, framing the trial not just as a fight for privacy, but as a confrontation with the entire royal institution. To many watching, this risked turning a civil lawsuit into a broader personal saga, leaving them wondering whether emotion was clouding objectivity. By this stage, the stakes had shifted dramatically. The courtroom was no longer simply examining whether unlawful information gathering had occurred. It was testing the strength, clarity, and reliability of Harry's own testimony. Every word he spoke carried weight, and the emotionally charged nature of his statements raised critical questions. Could his powerful but raw expressions of frustration, pain, and indignation ultimately weaken the very case he had fought to build? Was the man who had so often sought justice now jeopardizing his own pursuit of it through impassioned, unguarded declarations? In the end, the the day revealed a complex and striking tension. A witness who had spent years under scrutiny now found himself under the harshest examination of all, his own credibility. The courtroom had become a stage not just for the law, but for the deeply human drama of emotion, memory, and the struggle to be believed when the world is watching. Harry, who sued a media outlet, found himself on the defensive when he was accused of wrongly labeling a journalist. But what does it really mean to undermine journalism or the efforts of a journalist? Now let's unravel Prince Harry's tense battle with the press, the media trust dilemma. At the center of this complex and heated debate lies Prince Harry's uncompromising and deeply rigid view of modern journalism. To him, almost every article that references unnamed sources or mentions friends amounts to an attack, a deliberate intrusion into private life, or even a form of criminal behavior. This perspective, however, has raised eyebrows among experienced journalists, who argue that such thinking oversimplifies the realities of reporting and ignores the essential role that confidential sources play in news gathering. For media professionals, off-the-record briefings are not only legal, but a crucial tool to protect information while maintaining professional integrity. Similarly, the use of anonymous sources is often a shield designed to protect livelihoods, uncover wrongdoing responsibly, or report sensitive matters that might otherwise remain hidden, not to hide criminal acts. Harry's reliance on assumptions and inference over concrete proof creates a particularly fraught tension. In his courtroom testimony and public statements, suspicion frequently blurs into accusation. Observers noted that by interpreting every off-the-record comment or discreet conversation as evidence of malicious intent, Harry sometimes places individuals in challenging, almost impossible positions. People like Natalie Pinkham, repeatedly referenced in these discussions, find themselves caught in the crossfire of public scrutiny, often unfairly implicated by association, regardless of their actual actions. This dynamic feeds a cycle where mistrust grows and credibility is constantly questioned, amplifying stress and public speculation. Beneath Harry's courtroom behavior lies a complex history of personal pain and trauma that cannot be overlooked. From his teenage years to the relentless media attention on his marriage and family, Harry has lived under constant scrutiny, shaping a worldview where privacy is not just important, it is sacred. Any perceived intrusion feels like a profound betrayal. Yet this heightened sense of caution carries risks. The line between legitimate concern and near paranoia can become dangerously thin. Observers watching the proceedings see a man deeply shaped by past breaches of trust, fiercely protective of himself and those he loves, but also vulnerable to overreaction. His intense vigilance, while understandable, risks being misread, exposing him to criticism for potentially misjudging ordinary journalistic behavior. It is a delicate human struggle, played out under public eyes. This intersection of personal trauma, legal proceedings, and media relations paints a complicated and fascinating picture. On one hand, it underscores the very real pressures and vulnerabilities that come with life in the public eye. On the other hand, it highlights how high-profile individuals can misinterpret standard journalistic practices when past experiences color their perception. In Harry's case, the result is a courtroom drama that is not just about privacy violations, but about trust, suspicion, and the fine line between self-protection and paranoia. As the debate unfolds, it becomes clear that understanding Harry's mindset requires more than legal analysis. It demands a careful look at the emotional and psychological toll of a life lived under relentless scrutiny. Harry's deep mistrust makes ordinary news and sources appear suspicious, fueling worry and tension. But has Harry faced similar cases before? What were the outcomes? Did he win or lose? Now let's explore his previous battles against the tabloids. Harry's legal history. This latest courtroom drama is far from Prince Harry's first clash with the press. His ongoing legal battle is actually part of a pattern, one that stretches back to 2023 when he faced Mirror Group newspapers, the publisher behind the Daily Mirror. That case was groundbreaking, not just for the stakes involved, but for Harry himself. He became the first member of the British royal family in 130 years to personally take the stand in a court of law. The image of a prince testifying under oath captivated the public and made headlines around the world, signaling that this was no ordinary legal fight. In that earlier case, the court closely examined a total of 33 articles, scrutinizing them for evidence of unlawful information gathering, often referred to as UIG. The findings were significant. 15 of those articles were determined to have been created through illegal methods, including breaches of privacy, phone hacking, and other intrusive techniques. The ruling was a decisive victory for Harry, and the court awarded him £140,600 in damages, a tangible acknowledgement of the violations he and his family endured. Yet, this was only part of the story. The following year, Mirror Group newspapers chose to settle the remaining claims tied to an astonishing 115 more articles. In agreeing to these settlements, they committed to paying substantial additional damages, covering both Harry's legal costs and compensation for the ongoing intrusion into his personal life. This move shone a spotlight on just how relentless the media can be, emphasizing that even a member of the royal family is not shielded from invasive reporting. The settlements highlighted the sheer scale of the problem, sending a powerful message about the consequences of overstepping privacy boundaries and reinforcing the enduring struggle for personal space amid public scrutiny. This prior courtroom experience is more than just background context. It shapes everything about the current case. Observers note that Harry's credibility, composure, and legal strategy are now being analyzed under a microscope. Having already taken on a major publisher and emerged victorious, expectations are high for both his conduct and his arguments in this new legal showdown. Every statement, every reaction, and every approach to the media is now weighed against that precedent, intensifying the pressure and scrutiny on the Duke of Sussex. Understanding this history helps explain why his behavior in court, whether moments of visible frustration, emotional testimony, or tense exchanges with the judge, is so significant. It's not just about the details of the current dispute, it's about a continuing saga of a man defending his privacy against a relentless media machine. This context paints a fuller picture of why the courtroom drama surrounding Harry is as captivating as it is consequential, offering a rare glimpse into the delicate balance between public life, private rights, and the extraordinary pressures of being a modern royal. Harry was victorious when he sued Mirror Group newspapers. But does he have enough evidence to win this time? And what pieces of evidence does he hope to present? Now, let's dive into Harry's emotional testimony on his former loves, haunted by the past. While much of the courtroom drama centered on privacy violations and media scrutiny, perhaps the most striking moments of Prince Harry's testimony revolved not around his wife, Meghan Markle, but his previous relationships. His focus repeatedly returned to his former girlfriends, particularly Chelsea Davy and Cressida Bonas, as he painted a picture of heartbreak, regret, and lingering guilt. These were not casual references. Each mention carried weight, emotion, and a sense of unresolved pain that seemed to seep into the room with him. When speaking about Chelsea, Harry's words were laden with remorse. He recounted the fear and paranoia she experienced once she became entangled in his public life, describing how the constant media intrusion upended her world. The press, he suggested, followed them relentlessly, dissecting every moment of their relationship and amplifying the pressure of being connected to a royal. Harry's testimony made it clear that he carried a heavy sense of responsibility for how these relationships had been affected, framing the narrative in terms of personal accountability, emotional scars, and the enduring impact of scrutiny on those closest to him. The same story unfolded when Harry spoke of Cressida Bonas and Natalie Pinkham. He painted these relationships as fragile, strained by constant suspicion, alleged leaks, and the relentless glare of public attention. According to his account, mistrust gradually wore away the connections, leaving behind a mix of frustration, heartbreak, and emotions that never fully healed even after the relationships ended. It wasn't just external pressures at play. Harry's words hinted at a deeper, more complicated emotional history that shaped these bonds. This layered vulnerability revealed how personal pain and past experiences quietly influenced the rise and fall of these connections. These moments of reflection raised larger questions about the role of the past in Harry's life. Why do these former relationships continue to surface in legal proceedings centered on current grievances? What do these recollections reveal about the unresolved emotional threads that still influence his behavior and decisions today? Observers noted that his testimony offered more than just anecdotes. It painted a vivid portrait of a man still navigating the shadows of past attachments while trying to assert his voice and protect his family in the present. By revisiting these intimate chapters of his life, Harry exposed vulnerabilities rarely seen by the public. The courtroom became more than a legal setting. It became a stage where old wounds, personal regrets, and lingering anxieties collided with the stark realities of public scrutiny. Each reference to a past love, each recollection of fear or betrayal, provided a window into the prince's emotional landscape, revealing a complex mix of guilt, longing, and the enduring struggle to reconcile private pain with the demands of life in the spotlight. Beyond delving into his past relationships to make a point, Harry also targeted certain female journalists in his testimony. Who were they? And how professional were they in their work? Could they really be guilty of the accusations? Or were they simply doing their jobs? Let's uncover the details. Journalists on trial. As the courtroom drama unfolded, the spotlight increasingly shifted from the alleged media violations to the reputations of specific journalists, most notably Rebecca English and Katie Nicholl. Harry's legal team positioned them as central players in what they portrayed as a vast, orchestrated media conspiracy, suggesting that these reporters were key figures in a system that relentlessly pursued the prince and his family. In the telling of Harry's testimony, their work was not merely professional reporting, it was cast as a direct assault on his privacy, a carefully executed campaign with personal consequences. Yet according to industry insiders and media veterans, this portrayal clashed sharply with reality. Rebecca English and Katie Nicholl are widely recognized as accomplished professionals whose careers have been built on access, thorough networking, and skillful use of open-source reporting, not secretive wrongdoing. Their reporting, these insiders argue, follows journalistic norms, relying on legitimate sources and research rather than covert, illegal activities. In other words, the image presented by Harry's team painted them as villains in a story that, within the journalism world, is far more nuanced and grounded in standard practice. Adding yet another twist to the courtroom drama, many of the key sources cited in the disputed stories were no longer alive. Their absence only fueled suspicion, yet made it nearly impossible to confirm claims. Without these witnesses to clarify details or testify under oath, the trial became a tense arena where assumptions and accusations often clashed. Every statement was weighed against what could not be proven, leaving room for doubt and speculation. This void heightened the stakes, forcing both sides to navigate a delicate balance between fact, interpretation, and the shadow of uncertainty hanging over the case. The courtroom quickly transformed into more than just a venue for legal arguments. It became a symbolic battlefield. Every moment seemed charged with the weight of decades of royal reporting, a struggle between the stories shaped by media, organizations, and the personal grievances of a high-profile royal. Each question, each response echoed larger conflicts. The delicate balance between an individual's right to privacy and the freedom of the press, the ethical responsibilities of journalists, and the enduring tension that arises when public figures' private lives are relentlessly scrutinized. The stakes felt immense, far beyond the immediate case. Through it all, the case underscored the delicate balance journalists must navigate, maintaining access and credibility while adhering to ethical standards, all under the intense gaze of both the public and, in this case, the courtroom. For viewers and observers, this segment of the trial offered more than legal insight. It provided a behind-the-scenes look at the complex, high-stakes world of royal reporting, where professional reputations, public perception, and legal interpretations intersect in a drama as compelling as the headlines themselves. The female journalists mentioned by Harry's counsel were recognized as professionals, and the death of some key witnesses made the case even more complicated. But But what lies ahead for Harry and his opponents? Could the outcome favor him, or might he lose? Now, let's delve into a case that could reshape Fleet Street: strategy, stakes, and the fragile balance of the courtroom. At its core, this legal battle is not about absolute certainty. It revolves around probability. The question before the court is deceptively simple yet deeply consequential. Did the articles in question, more likely than not, result from unlawful information gathering? In legal terms, even the slightest shift in the judge's perception can determine the outcome. Every nuance of testimony, every pause, every emotional outburst carries weight. For Harry, the stakes are enormous. Even a narrow victory could ripple far beyond the courtroom walls, sending shockwaves through public perception, potentially damaging reputations, triggering significant financial consequences, and reigniting scrutiny of Fleet Street's long and complicated history with the royal family. Yet, despite the gravity of the situation, critics have been quick to question the very approach Harry has taken. They argue that his strategy may be undermining his own case. On one hand, he briefs the media, sharing insights and giving interviews about the proceedings. On the other, he condemns those same journalists for intruding into his private life. This duality, simultaneously relying on coverage while criticizing it, creates a tension that can be difficult for any judge to ignore. Add to this the emotional intensity of Harry's testimony, at times passionate and raw, and some observers suggest that personal feelings may have begun to override careful legal discipline. At its core, the same qualities that make Prince Harry's story so gripping, his raw vulnerability, visible frustration, and unfiltered emotion, could also threaten his legal battle. Courtrooms demand careful balance. The judge must weigh facts calmly, while Harry must present himself as credible and composed. Even small mistakes, brief lapses in judgment, or moments of intense emotion can be scrutinized and blown out of proportion. Each reaction, each gesture, each word spoken could influence the outcome, turning personal expression into potential legal risk. As the courtroom drama nears its end, attention may turn in surprising directions. The story might no longer be solely about intrusive press coverage, phone hacking, or media overreach. Instead, all eyes could shift to Harry himself, how his actions, his emotional responses, and the way he confronts questions under pressure might be influencing the outcome. Could his own choices, how he engages with the media, presents his arguments, and handles the intense scrutiny, be quietly undermining the very case he has spent years preparing to defend? This is a trial where perception is as critical as proof, where emotion intersects with strategy, and where every move, every statement, and every reaction is analyzed not only for its legal merit, but also for its impact on credibility. In the end, it is a high-stakes chess game, and for Harry, winning may depend less on what the press did, and far more on how he navigates the treacherous and unrelenting scrutiny of the courtroom. The outcome will not just determine the case, it could redefine how the royal family and the media intersect, shaping public understanding for years to come. So, what do you think about Harry's courtroom reaction? Will it help him win the case, or could it backfire? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.